Oh shoot, we're live.
We're
So
live!
let's go ahead and start. Hey everybody, how's it going? Portable Trevor here, and today I have a very fun guest that I've been looking forward to. Please welcome Miss Deanna Schaekel. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. It's good to see you. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Deanna is a professional actor. She's worked She's worked at places like SeaWorld, Disney World, all the worlds. Um, she's
Universal.
a Universal. That's cool. You didn't tell me that one. We'll have to talk about that. And
Yeah.
you're an amazing improviser, and you're just hilarious. I think you should consider yourself a comedian.
Oh, thank you. I do, but of course, I say that lightly because
Hmm.
everybody does have a different interpretation of comedy. But I think mostly, um, I've learned about not taking myself too seriously, and I find myself funny. So other people find that funny sometimes as well.
Nice. So
Yeah.
what I've been doing with everyone, all of my guests so far, is I kind of take them through this timeline. Like we start from the beginning, like how did you get started,
Mhm.
and then we kind of just come to now. And uh, I think your journey is very fascinating. Also, I don't think I've talked much about your journey, like with you in private or whatever. So I think this will be fun. So first of all, you're from Florida, correct?
Yeah, well, I lived in Florida. That's the during the time I was working at Disney World. But
Okay.
originally, I'm from Minnesota. I lived there
Okay.
for 12 years. Then Texas. Then I lived in Texas. I lived in Houston and Austin. I lived
Hmm.
out in California for a while. I lived in Irvine. That's a little ways outside LA. I lived in Chicago for a couple summers.
Ooh.
I lived in Florida, and I am now here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Nice. So that is a lot of places to live.
Yeah,
So let's start with at Minnesota. So you're
sure.
growing up in Minnesota. How long did you, or how old were you whenever you decided like I want to pursue art and creativity and acting and just the entertainment business? When did you realize that?
Well, great question. My mom said when I was 2, I started like going in the backyard and like doing these dances for the sticks and stuff on the ground. So she was like, "Oh, I think she wants to entertain," because I was just doing that
Mhm.
and loving it, and like all through my life, I wanted to dance. I wanted to like put on little plays and everything. My first big movie that I was an extra in was Grumpier Old Men when I was 9. I was as extra, but I was also a stand-in for one of the lead children in that movie, the little girl in it that's 9. And so I wasn't quite into any kind of acting yet, but I was like very intrigued by what was happening in like the film world and the movie business. Um, and then but nothing super formal acting wise or improv wise at all in Minnesota. I really was just in dance classes at that time.
And was there anything else you ever tried, or do you think, or was it always like art and creativity and performing?
Well, my family is all very athletic, so I was primarily doing all sports,
Hmm.
and then I just loved to dance. And so every time that like I was going to t-ball practice, because that would make my dad and my brothers proud and stuff, I'd be kind of like dragging the bat behind me, and I'd be like, no, no, I want to dance instead. I want to twirl on this bat.
Did you like
And
go
it
up to
was
the
like,
plate and do like a little twirl with a bat?
yes, all the time. And they really cared about me being well-rounded,
Hmm.
which I'm really grateful for now. But I was really just doing sports or dance classes for like the first 12 years of my life.
And did you enjoy the dance classes when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed the recitals the most. So it was tons of practice all year long practice. And then it would be like, oh, it's the recital. And you would get to perform for a huge audience, and like you could feel that energy of like really giving yourself fully to what you were doing,
Hmm.
and feeding off a response from the audience. And there's something that was like made me feel so alive about that.
Nice. So did you ever go to college or anything for this?
Yes. So the way that the journey went from there is I moved to Texas, and then in Texas, I took up an interest in cheerleading. So I cheered all the way through college. That's where my peppiness comes from. Some say, you know, decide if as you will, if you think that's true. And then,
I think you're peppy.
oh, thanks. And then let's see, from college, yeah, it was still all kind of like cheer and dance related through college.
Mhm.
I did actually in high school. I sort of on like a dare decided to audition for like the musical at the time, which was Oklahoma. And I thought I might be able to like dance in the ensemble, but they put me as the lead, Lori,
Whoa.
in the musical. And oh, okay, I got a question. What college
Hey,
did you attend in Texas? Hi there.
that's actually my
Um,
dad. Hey, Dad.
oh, hi. Nice to meet you. Yes, I went to I went to Concordia University in Austin.
Nice.
It's very close to the University of Texas
How many years did
in
you
Austin.
attend?
For 4 years, but that's also when the coolest thing about my college is that you could do a semester at you could do a semester at another school. And so I went for one semester in Irvine, and they would let you do that at Concordia with all the campuses. And I thought that was awesome.
That is awesome. So you're at Texas. What was the next state you moved to?
Okay, yes. So then I officially formally moved from Texas to go work at Disney World. So that was the big leap of
Oh
faith, is that
man.
I was studying marketing and public relations and going down that track. I had an internship at the largest theater, the largest stage in Texas, and I was doing marketing for Grease, the musical. And so like I met Danny and Sandy and all the characters, and I was like, oh, what's your life like? Like what's it like to perform and make people laugh and dance on stage like for a living? And they
Mhm.
were so honest with me about it. They were like, there's days that it's the best thing in the world. And there's days when we're on tour, we really hope that our hotel room is going to have a kitchen in it so that we can make a sandwich. And I was like, what an interesting thing to like wish to have. Like I want to make my own sandwich. It
That's
makes sense
hilarious.
now. Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
so,
so that's actually like what I have on your thumbnail, former Disney princess. So
yeah.
um, like Disney, it just sounds like a fun, magical place to work. And was it that? Like, can we debunk some rumors about working for Disney?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the cross, how that all took place is that when I talked to Danny from Greece and asked him if I
Mhm.
should audition for Disney World, he was like, "Go for it, absolutely." So I showed up to that audition and I got in, and that's a whole nother story that I will, share another time to you
Okay.
or to anyone like. But yeah, then I started working for Disney World full time out the gate, like right out of college, and it was wild because all through college and all your business classes and marketing classes and everything, you learn that like Disney is perfect and Disney is king in a sense, right?
Mhm.
And the wild thing about that is that Disney is full of humans and full of human error, and so it's not
Mhm.
actually perfect. They put on like a great show for the guest, but behind the scenes is not always perfect, and there's things where people get hurt and people can fail you and leadership fails you, and there's times where I failed, and just the normal things of life of it's not always perfect. Like the way that you think Disney's the happiest place on earth. Well, there's a lot of behind the scenes, tears and hard work that puts on that show for people.
Nice. What was the very first thing you did for them?
So I actually got to do characters right away.
Oh,
The way that
nice.
it works, yeah, the way that it works within Disney is that you are friends with what they call fur characters first, and that would
Mhm.
be like all the characters that you're covered in like a full suit. So think of Mickey and Goofy and all those characters, and then next you could go into the face characters. So I actually got to be friends with Mary Poppins and Sleeping Beauty right away, like right when I started working for Disney. And it was quite a ride, very magical experience to,
What was the first character you played as?
Um, okay, I'm seeing another question. What years
Yeah.
were you at Disney? Awesome. Yeah, so I actually was at Disney from 2010 to about 2014-ish full time.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last year I was kind of what they call seasonal. So I was on and off at Disney then. But yeah, so the first character I was trained to be friends with Sleeping Beauty first, and then trained to be friends with Mary Poppins next.
Nice. Which one was your favorite to play as?
I actually loved the mix. Like it was really fun. It was really fun to me to get to play this super sweet princess that's like everything is, amazing, and like the whole outlook and everything is so sweet in the way that little girls would look at you like you're my idol. Like it was just this very and then you get to tell them that they're beautiful, and they're hearing that from someone that's their idol, right?
Mhm.
I think it's a position of power that you have, and a pedestal that you have, which I never wanted to take for granted. Um, and I think it's also interesting with Mary Poppins that she's different. She has more sass. She has more like, this is who I am, and this is the way it is, and make your bed. And that's a part of Mary Poppins. It was fun to me that she had a British accent, and I trained for that. And it was a lot of fun to like have that dynamic of like she's much more prim and proper, and things are a certain way, and the princess is much more sweet and loving and kind to everyone. So.
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
Dad. Saying
yeah,
we were there at fall 2010, so Trevor I probably
yeah.
saw you.
Honestly, it's quite possible I was doing, not shows and parades right away. I probably was in
Mhm.
training at that time. But yeah, the way it kind of works is that you go through the ranks of what you can do as a character, right? And the first thing would be like meet and greets, signing autographs and that type of thing. And the next big exciting thing is getting to do like shows and parades. And
That's
so I
cool.
was very fortunate to get to do shows and parades at Disney World, which the largest stage of entertainment in the entire world. It was a great start to a very fun career.
Nice. Do you have any stories about any kids that made you or you were, like, on the brink of breaking character?
Oh yes, absolutely. So Disney will always teach you and train you that you want to stay in character no matter what, and I'm very
Mhm.
thankful for that training. But there was a few moments that were a little wild. One of my favorite things is that as the princess character, there would be little like young men, little boys that would just have like a crush on you, but they didn't know how to express it. And so like maybe they're 3 or 4, and they would just like be shy, but be like, "Oh, Sleeping Beauty, I'm glad that you woke up." Like,
That's
what do you
adorable.
do? Right? It's like, oh my goodness, you just want to like tell them that they're so sweet, and like, wow, what a handsome prince you are, and being so sweet back. Um,
That is
but
sweet.
but also there was a little boy that after he said, I have a crush or whatever, he's like, I want to show you something. And I was like, okay. And he pulled down his pants, and he had on princess underwear. Like this is a real
That's
thing that.
amazing.
Yes, he had on, princess underwear, and right away
Big
I was like,
fan.
"Oh my gosh, I could get fired." Like I'm trying to like stay in character, but I'm also like, "Oh my goodness, pull up your pants!" Like there's cameras everywhere all the time, and this looks like that could look really bad.
Yeah.
It was a wild thing to happen in that moment, and I definitely had a hard time staying in character. But
So what did you say to him? Did you just say, like, "Pick up your pants right now,
oh
please"?
no, his parents filled in by being like, "Oh yay, you did it! That's so sweet." like maybe he had told them that he had this plan. I'm not sure. But then right after that, they pretty much said, "Okay, good." That they filled in, and they were like, "That's good." And I was gracious and said, "Thank you for sharing, but also let's talk about something else." you know I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing about like it's so challenging within living within a character that is so iconic, and it's
Mhm.
very classic, right? But humans are unpredictable, and anyone can come into your space and ask a question that was never taught in the rule book or never taught in your Disney training. And so I think at the beginning of my Disney experience, I was like, I would like more training to be able to handle anything that's like thrown at me. And that's when I realized like, ooh, I want to take improv classes. Oh, so
What was the biggest lesson you think you learned while you were working at Disney?
whew, maybe going along with what I've talked about already, the first thing that jumps to mind is like, not everything is as it seems on the outside, but that's okay. Right? There's still like a lot of magic that Disney is able to portray without things being absolutely perfect. And then I think bringing that like very personal for myself, I think there was sometimes like this anxiety that can come in with playing this iconic character. And am I going to do it? Am I doing it justice? And am I doing it good enough? Like I want to do it good enough. But the reality is that as Deanna, as a person, like I've done a lot of work on myself to be kind and to be, as Mary Poppins, to also like put my shoulders down and like say the things I want, right? Like that was work that was I started doing that work as a person, and it was also being infused with these characters. And so to bring the parts of myself into these characters that were true of me and were real was the best I could ever play those characters, And so I think that awesome. I was kind of like learning those lessons as I was at Disney, which have now been a part of like the rest of my acting career. That it's like, even if you're playing a character that's very different than yourself, as you find the things that have to do with the self-work that you've done, right? In the case of being a princess, to be truly kind, to let that come through as like Deanna's kindness is now being melded with a princess's kindness. And that's the realest thing that I can be. That's the most authenticity that I can bring to this for another person, to like really connect and to really bring a real magic. I believe that there's still like real magic in the world. I just think that it exists within like authenticity and connection.
And are you a big Disney fan yourself, or did you just kind of do it for the job?
No, I'm not like what I would call a mega Disney nerd. Like there was definitely things I rolled my eyes at during my time at Disney. And I kind of loved like being that character a little bit that was backstage, like, the Mary Poppins that would like put up her high top Nike sneakers on the table right after I got off a set being like, mind your manners. It would be like I walk backstage and I've got like my Nikes up and I'm talking about like, oh, I'm going to take shots this weekend. Like I wanted to have this duality because I found like comedy in that. Mm-hmm. But the real parts of me that were coming through and that were in the character, I think that's the lesson that I wanted to carry on throughout my life.
Nice. And you're also like a professional improviser. Do you think you learned a lot of lessons from Disney, even though like your audience was mostly children?
Oh yes, yeah, and it's actually a mix. Like it's surprising to a lot of people how many full-grown adults come to meet the characters, but we had a ton. So this kind of goes back to like, being like nerdy about Disney and stuff like that. Like I don't call myself a full-on Disney nerd, but like when I would go meet the characters and I played one, like I would still like, oh, that's Cinderella. Like, oh my gosh, Gaston, right? Like it would still happen for me. It would still happen, this like thing inside of me that was like, oh, yes, wow, that really is Nemo, right? Even though it's my best friend playing Nemo, it still would be like, oh, there's a part of this that's just so like, I can't wait to suspend my disbelief because there's something really magical in that for me. And when the castle, like when they do the castle lighting at Christmas and there's that moment that Cinderella like waves her hand, now Elsa waves her hand, and the whole thing lights up. It's like, I don't know that I can fully describe in words how that feels, but it's like beyond the existence of being human. It feels like there's something supernatural in that for me, that it's like, I can't imagine that I'd want to be anywhere else in the world right now. And I can't imagine a happier feeling than this.
That's awesome. I remember being a kid, like I've been to Disney World like 3 times, I think. And like every time I went, like even though I was, when I was a teenager, whenever I went, I was like, this is still awesome. I love Disney World. Like it's so magical. It just makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is like, how do you think Disney is able to do that? Just, you know, e- like maybe it's me being a cynical adult, but whenever I look at these costumes, I'm like, that's obviously fake. That's not Nemo. That's not Mickey. Like, how do you think they're able to do that? Like, I guess that's with any mascot in general. Like, a kid is able to look at that, run up to them, and be like, I'm actually in front of the Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, there's a couple ways. So Disney's really careful about that we have a phrase that we say there is only one Mickey Mouse.
Hmm.
So you can imagine what that means as far as like the on-stage presentation is that you will only ever see one Mickey Mouse in the park at any given time. And so that's a way that they're like preserving the magic of it being real, and
Hmm.
then there's this part within the training that's like, if you are going to play Mickey Mouse, then you study and you train and you figure out what those little things about Mickey that would make even an extremely cynical adult, middle-aged man or woman say, whoa, that reminded me of the same Mickey that I watched in cartoons for a second. And then no matter what is going on in your world, there can be that little moment that's like, I remember when I didn't, I remember when I would let myself just believe. I remember it for a second. And maybe your whole day at Disney as a parent, it's not always that way, right? Sometimes you're like dealing with your own kids and making sure they're happy and 100-degree temperatures sometimes and fussy and little babies and everything. Like I've also done VIP tour guiding for Disney, so I can tell you horror stories about that as well.
Oh man,
Um,
please do.
but but yeah, I would just say that like the way Disney does it is that they put a big emphasis on the training, um, at least from the character standpoint. And then within the park and everything having to do with the park, they keep it very clean. They like Walt always wanted it to be a place that was like, oh, I feel safe here. And I feel like it's really taken care of. It's like if you walk into someone's house and they've like gone out of their way to make it very hospitable and welcoming, you feel like you belong there and
Hmm.
you don't worry about so many things, right? It feels comfortable, it feels welcoming and warm. I think Disney takes that like to the max. Okay.
Nice. But yeah, let's hear a VIP horror story, and then we'll move on.
Okay, so VIP horror story. I would do VIP tours of Walt Disney World for some elite guests. You can probably imagine that means sometimes they would fly in on private jets and things like that. So I did have a family one time that was texting me, calling me, saying like, Miss Tour Guide, we do have a bunch of concerns. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, talk to me. What's going on? And they were like, the pillows at the Animal Kingdom Lodge. And I was like, well, what's happening with the pillows? And they said, oh, they didn't have down feathers in them, and that's the only kind of pillow that we sleep on. And I was like, oh, goodness. And really, I'm thinking, like, this has nothing to do with my position at all. I'm the one that's going to be walking you through the park tomorrow. But I do want to address your concerns, and they were like, well, we've already handled it. We talked to management and we told them the reason we have the largest suite in the hotel is so that we can have any pillow we like. So they're picking them up for us right now. And I was like, okay, yes. And it was the Animal Kingdom Lodge where they don't use animal products or byproducts. That is the reason that they didn't have down pillows there. And they insisted that Disney broke their own code to bring the down-filled pillows to their special suite. And yes, this was also the same family that insisted I bring chicken fingers for their child into a steak restaurant from an outside, like, quick cart, like quick service cart. So I was like walking in with this like to-go box of chicken fingers to like a very nice steak restaurant. Uh,
That's embarrassing.
what's that?
Wow. I said that's embarrassing to do. I feel like just having these little chicken fingers and be like, here you go, next to your $100 steak.
Yeah, but you know what? At the end of the day, the guest is always right.
That's true. Cool. Well, let's move on because I know there's so much more to talk about than Disney, I think, with you. So, you work at Disney World for a few years. What's next?
Yeah, great question. Because I think within Disney, it's interesting. You could feel like, well, there might just be one more rung on the ladder that I want to go. And
Mhm.
that can become a little bit of a cycle of like, ooh, I could probably stay here for a very long time. Right. I think what I started realizing too, that as a creative, that if I continued to um, tell someone else's stories, there would be a point in my life that I was like, I really want to write the script myself. I really want to draw my own Mickey Mouse. I really want to make my own stuff. And and I just knew that like the only way that I was really going to feel satisfied as a creative was being like, I need to fumble through that. I need to like go fail at that. But eventually I need to go find a way to really do that.
Mhm.
And so I think the last 6 years has been a mix of trying all that, right? Going in a million different directions, saying like, okay, right. As I was getting out of Disney, sort of what happened is I was signed with a commercial agency in Florida to start doing like TV commercials. From there, I started working with Fox Sports. I wanted to just get more and more in TV and hosting. So I became the host of a jet ski racing show and a cigarette boat racing TV show. And those were on a couple Fox
All
Sports.
about the water sports.
Yes, because if I was going to do any sports, I thought it would be so cool to do water sports that
Mhm.
were, I don't know, water sports and jet ski racing is like really unique and really fun to me. And yeah, through that whole process, learned a whole nother um, can of worms that was wild and crazy. But I was like, oh, I'm definitely interested in being around TV and film for sure. But
Can you
out of,
give us a taste of how you hosted that?
pardon?
Can you give us a taste of how you hosted
Oh,
that?
sure, sure. I would say, welcome to the Grand Prix of the Sea. We're here in Daytona, Florida, and we're about to see these jet ski races at your fingertips. Sometimes it would
That's
go like
awesome.
that, right? Sometimes I would like fumble in the middle of a word, and because we were able to edit it, um, we'd just say, all right, let's take that again. But it's a little wild when you're doing that at a race because you don't have a ton of time before the racers are going to hop in the water. And you might want to get those clips that are like, okay, we got to go grab an interview from Chris McLuggage and a couple of the racers. And you're trying to do that right before they hop in the water. So sometimes that was wild.
That's
But
awesome. So what happened? What did you do next?
yeah, so from Fox Sports, I was like, oh, I'm having a good time doing this, but I know I want to do even more. I want to do like narrative. I want to
Mhm.
I want to push into TV and film for narrative and episodic. So that is when I decided, like, yes, I want to move to Atlanta. Because at the time, Atlanta was number two and becoming number one for narrative and episodic, like in the world.
Yeah,
So
I talked to Isaac, or I interviewed Isaac Dietz yesterday, and everybody should go watch that.
yeah,
And Isaac was talking about when he moved here. I'm guessing you moved here around the time like The Walking Dead was like at its peak, and a bunch of other huge TV shows are being filmed here. The Avengers is filmed here, and everything.
yeah.
Marvel films are filmed here. So, what was that like whenever you moved here around that time?
So I actually moved here like 2.5 years ago.
Oh, okay, my bad.
No, it's okay. So that wasn't quite at what I would say like Walking Dead's peak, but
Yeah,
I would say it's still a big deal to get an audition for Walking Dead. It's still a
right.
big deal to like, oh wow, I'm gonna get to audition for this Marvel project, but I have to sign NDAs and I can't say anything about it, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, what the process of that looked like too was that when I was going from commercial to hosting on sports, so hosting sports television to like now I want to do narrative and episodic. Like I moved here, but I didn't get an agent right away, and I did not start auditioning for anything Walking Dead or Marvel or anything right away. That took a lot of time.
Mhm.
I had quite a bit of networking to do. I had training to do as an actor. Like if just because I had done, Disney character work and television commercials and some TV, it didn't mean that I had fully filled out my training as like a dramatic and comedic actor. I was training in improv, but I still had a lot of work to do. And so yeah, I hit the ground running with like training, and like I said, I was starting to network, and eventually I signed that agent, and now I am with Atlanta Models and Talent is my agency, and I love them, and I'm very grateful for them. They work super super hard to give me kick-ass auditions, and yeah, those are all the things I'm working on now. I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, that's great. And I see your question at the bottom. We'll answer that in a little bit.
Oh,
But
okay, cool.
yeah, totally. So, what are some misconceptions that people have whenever? Because I feel like for a lot of people, especially like actors and actresses, they think like peak or the kickoff of their career is getting an agent. Do you think that's like a fix it, or do you think that's just like, a first step?
Do I think that, I'm sorry, can you say this one more time?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just saying, like, it feels like I've met some actors, like at least from my hometown, they're like, man, I need to get an agent, and they kind of they perceive it as like this quick fix it thing that'll help them, get gigs and everything. Do you think it's a quick fix it, or do you think it's like a good first step?
Gosh, such a good question, especially because even for me, there's been times that like, well, I, I think I was like, oh, right away I'm going to move to Atlanta, and right away I'm going to get an agent because I had some big names on my resume. I had Disney on my resume. I had Fox Sports on my resume. So I thought,
Mhm.
okay, pretty natural. They will recognize my talent and they will sign me, And it was like, kind of something that's really important to the Atlanta market for casting directors to trust you is they want to see credits in the shows that are filming here. And it's hard to get those credits without an agent here. And so this
Mhm.
is kind of this like catch 22 of, oh, but if I just signed that agent, that would be the key. And it's like, well, signing the agent is hard because there was a hold on agencies signing anyone for a year because there was such an influx of people pouring here to be like, oh, I want to get into acting. I want to do TV and film in Atlanta. And so there was a hold, there were agents not signing people. But once you do get the agent, now it's about, if you have done years and years of acting training, now it's like, well, you get to know all the casting directors in your market. And they're seeing your tapes or they're seeing your in-person auditions to the point that they trust you and would book you. And now once they've booked you, you might book a project or two as a one-liner, right? Coming in as like news anchor or coming in as policewoman or whatever it may be. And that is like the beginning. So that still doesn't necessarily like give you or bless you with this acting career that's bountiful and there's golden coins like DuckTales style falling from the sky, right? It seems like, oh, once I book the one job, like there's so many rumors about like as the actor, there's this one thing that will change everything. And that's not actually the case for most. That is the exception, not the rule. And so I think to decide as an artist and a creative that you love the work enough to just do the work for the rest of your life is actually the key. So
Nice.
if you're gonna decide to be an actor, then you're saying, I actually love acting more than I love success because the success part is not guaranteed ever in acting. It might come, it might happen. It's cool if it does, but I
Mhm.
think if you kind of look at like redefining what it is to be successful and you love the work that you do, if you love the projects that you can create and do with your friends and that kind of thing, if you love acting itself, then you can have a career in acting because you love the work, regardless of whether it turns out a certain way.
I feel like a lot of people have this perception that actors are just egotistical maniacs that just want fame and fortune and all this stuff. But really, like, I would say there's more actors that you don't know about than you do. So, like, a lot of actors, you'll never know their name, but I think they're, um, yeah, thank you for writing that down. I think there's a lot of actors that just enjoy the art. There's a documentary I saw. I never watched it, but it was this guy. He said like the opening like line to the trailer was like, "I've been in like 700 movies, and you have no idea who I am."
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's acting. I think like
Yeah.
getting 1,000 roles and 1,000 auditions and not seeing any fame or a whole lot of money from it. Would you say that you've met more? actors that are just passionate about the art project, or have you met a lot of actors that are in it for the fame and the potential fortune?
Yeah, I've been super lucky. Like I live in a house of artists, and
Hmm.
first and foremost, like almost everyone here really cares about the work itself, right? Really cares about becoming an artist for art itself, like sharing and creating experiences and sharing those experiences authentically. That's something that I'm surrounded by people that really care about that. When I work in the industry, right, I'm booked either on a show or a commercial or whatever I may be working that week. It's like, it's a mix, right? But I think as a whole, I'm very lucky in Atlanta that there's a lot of good people here, like good people,
Hmm.
not just good actors. And I think that I'm so thankful that my agent actually said this to me, is that you're a human being first, and then you're an actor. And if you can remember to live that way, that's actually going to serve your work and make you the best at whatever you decide to do. Is that you don't forget to check in with like who you are as a human being and the needs that you have, and then let that be a part of your work. Let that be a part of everything that you do. um, so I think within that, I actually want to speak to what you said about being like egotistical, or
Hmm.
how there can be sometimes this rumor with like, oh, actors are just all about themselves. And there's a really weird fine balance there, because at the end of the day, if you are going to make it, so to speak, right, if you're going to make this your work and your life and your dreams coming true, you have to believe it more than anyone else does. You have to decide for yourself, like, yes, I can actually do this and I am good enough, without anyone else giving you the permission to be, or
Hmm.
without anyone else giving you the approval. It's like you have to make that choice. And it can go, that's where it can teeter over into like, well, I'm better than anybody and I'm the best actor and that's why I should get that role because I deserve it. And that's the fine line, right? So every once in a while you'll be out working and you'll meet people that have teetered over, and that's hard because
Hmm.
I don't think anybody actually wants to be that, but I think people are trying to get balanced. People are trying to like get to that middle space where it's like, I believe in myself and I don't need anyone else to tell me so. I really know that I can do this.
Hmm. Do you think it's a bad thing to want to get into acting for the fame? Do you think that's a bad thing?
I don't want to say that it's a bad thing, but I definitely want to say it's a very, very tough way to like go about it, right?
Hmm.
Um, because that is the part that you have the least control over. And so living your life by, will all consider myself successful by what someone else says about my work, or how someone else controls, my level of success. That's tough no matter what the field is. I think that gets really sticky really quick, because, and I read a book called The Actor's Bible, probably, I would say like 6 years ago. And I think in the first page it said, if you're getting into this for the success, stop right now and then do anything else. Do any other career, do anything else. Because if you go into this for success and that's your aim, then choose another way to get famous. Choose something else. Because this one's going to be the hardest, it's going to be the most blood, sweat, and tears. And at the end of the day, you never have any guarantee you're going to get it.
That's kind of how it is with filmmaking too. Like last year, I made the most amount of money I've ever made from filmmaking or videoing, or which was awesome, but it was the least amount of money I've ever made in a year. Like that was such a weird thing to think about. Because before I worked in like IT and I worked at UPS for 6 years. Like I
Yeah.
had these really good jobs and I was making decent money for my living condition. Like I was living with my parents. I didn't pay any rent, but I wasn't happy. So I
Mm.
moved here to Atlanta and I'm a filmmaker. And
Yeah.
it's not all been all sunshine and rainbows, you know?
Yeah.
And I imagine it's the same way for you. Like, what would you say is some of the hardships that you've been through, like with this career path?
Yeah, I love that you said that, just in terms of thinking about like putting things in perspective with,
Hmm.
all right, it's the most money I've made filmmaking, but it's the least I've made in a year. That's really interesting because I've heard the phrase golden handcuffs. That's been a little helpful to me to think about, because when I was working as a Disney VIP tour guide, that was, I think, the most money that I could make doing anything, right? And in a given year, it was like, that was something that I was kind of like having a really hard time making the full move here. So I actually had already moved to Atlanta, and I hadn't moved to Atlanta, if that makes sense. So I was here, and it kind of looked like, oh, but the money I know I can make for sure is over here. Oh, but Atlanta is over here. And then it was sort of this like, oh man, I feel very torn because I just want to guarantee about something. And right now, everything about acting in Atlanta is like in the air floating. And so I was like, I'm kind of letting these golden handcuffs pull me in a direction that ultimately I don't want to go, because I don't want to be a Disney VIP tour guide for the rest of my life. I want to take the biggest risk possible. And that just might mean that for a while, I don't make any money at all. Like, or that I'm having to cut expenses like beyond in half and make a bunch of adjustments, right? So that's what I had to do. And that was hard because I didn't make money off acting right away in Atlanta, like at all. Like I was doing side jobs. Like I was like trying to do catering, so serving tables and cleaning rich people's trash and every kind of side job, just because I was like, I have to make money somehow, but I also want to keep like trucking away at this. Like, I really want to get an agent. I really want to act. I really want to do these things. Right. And
do you remember the moment that you made that decision? Like, what was that like going through your head?
Yes. Because I was like, I will have to decide. And my roommates really helped me with this too, because they could see this thing happening and they're like, oh, we love you, but we see you like ripping yourself to shreds trying to do both. And so I thought about that a lot. And I finally was just like, if I'm going to move to Atlanta and not move to Atlanta, what's the point? Right. And I finally just said, all right, that's it. I'm not working jobs in Florida starting this date. Right. And that was, I think, a year ago, maybe a little bit over a year ago. So that time when I was driving back from my last gig in Florida, I was pulling into the driveway here in Atlanta, and I was like, okay, that's what it feels like to put both of my feet down. And that's what I wanted to do. So now, like, I'm going to hit the ground running, and I know this is going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it.
I remember when I first got out of the moving truck when I got here in Atlanta at the Kind Punk House. I just kind of looked around and I like smelled the air. Didn't smell any different than Tennessee, but I was like, this is Georgia air and I am here. I have arrived. And it was honestly a beautiful moment, but I was still like scared out of my mind. Like, did you have any of those fears whenever you moved here? Like as soon as you got here? I mean, obviously you talked about the fears, but you had to have had fears while also having that like bittersweet moment of like, I'm here. I get to do what I want, but this is terrifying.
Yes, I love that you said that, Trevor, because I think a lot of times people feel like, well, the moment that I have no more fear is like when I've arrived and I've made it. And I think I believe completely in the opposite. I think you're doing the things with the fear that you have, and that's when you become really courageous. And living your life constantly courageous is so much more rewarding than anything else, So I don't want to get to this point that's like, I had pulled in that driveway, and you better believe I still had a lot of scary things coming up. I didn't know how I was going to make everything work. I didn't even know how I was going to make money for sure, because I had gigs that were like sort of working, but also I hadn't fully given myself all the way to Atlanta, and I was never going to know until I did. And so it was like, it feels good. It feels like I'm moving in the right direction, but I'm not sure. I just know that like, I'm going to listen to my gut to the best of my ability. And then if it's wrong, I'll make adjustments from there. But it feels good to be moving in a direction that's like, okay, this is the scariest thing. That's the next thing I need to do then. And that's, I think awesome. That's the kind of life that you actually want to live, is choose the thing that you're looking out there and you're being, that's what I really want. I know it's scary, but that's what I really want. And then fucking do it. Just do it at that point. Because I think you're going to go through life saying, like, every time you're like, wow, I'm so grateful. I took that risk. I took that risk. I took that risk. Every time you're going to be like, those are the stories you tell. Those are the things people write about. Those are the things we admire. And at the end of the day, it's how you can be truly proud of yourself, is being like, I didn't cower back or get too fearful to give that a try.
Nice. And what was your very first gig that you got when you moved here?
Ooh, well, I will say a huge shout out to Nathan Mowry.
Hey, our boy, we've had him on the show.
I know he was on the show recently. I actually had the privilege of getting some gigs in Atlanta before I had moved here. And that's a huge thanks to him, because we became friends through a couple of trips that I had to Atlanta. And then he had asked me to be in a couple of his music videos. So I'd say
cool.
first official gigs would be with your boy, Nathan.
Doing music videos?
By the way. What's that?
Doing music videos?
Yes.
Nice.
Music videos. And then if you're asking a little bit more of an acting question, man, that would be tough. I would have to go back and look through all the pictures, I think, because I had some acting gigs that sort of came here and there before my Atlanta agent. And that's because I did still have Florida agents. So I still had like a Florida orange juice commercial that I ended up booking. I went back to Florida for that, obviously. I still had a couple other gigs like that. And then when I started booking pretty consistently in Atlanta, that was like this January. At the start of this year, I was finding myself like through my agency on either commercial sets or TV show sets, like every other week for the most part.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I was like, okay, after putting in like 2.5 years of just grind, almost only just a straight grind, it was like, whoa, this past January, it was like, pop, 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 pop. Whoa, it's like some of it's starting to happen. Some of it's starting to come true. It's like the craziest feeling.
And let's talk about one of your favorite subjects, improv. So not only are you an actor, I feel like you're also an excellent improviser, because you also teach classes here. So what got you so into improv? Because even whenever, we're not having a class, you're not on stage, like I've heard you kind of like glow up whenever you talk about improv. Yeah. So what's this magical thing called improv that just intrigues you so much?
Oh, I will talk. If we had
There's the glow.
If we had started at the beginning of this podcast, I mean, at the beginning of this stream, talking about improv, that would have been the only subject for me, because that's like, I could talk about it. Like, I think my friend asked it this way when we were in a circle chatting. He's like, okay, what's everyone's topic that you get so nerdy about it that you just lose people at a point, right? And I was like, oh, I don't have one. I'm pretty cool. I don't think I'm a nerd. And then I realized like 3 seconds later when I started talking about long form improv and the Herald, I was like, oh, actually, yes, improv. Improv for me, that is where I lose people because I love it. And I think the base of your question there was like, what got me into it? What makes it so magical for me?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Maybe not Disney magic, but just magic.
Yeah, definitely. Like, well, and I think like what's interesting about that is that the real magic of Disney was that it wasn't Disney at all. It was something else that actually is a part of your life all the time, if you want it, right? And I think like, because I wanted to go into an improv class out of being a Disney princess, I was like, oh, I'd like to be a better Disney princess. Let me take some classes. I showed up at improv class and I was like, I have never laughed this much. I'm having the best time. I'm learning like such cool things about other people and myself. Like I'm feeling really vulnerable, but then at the same time, like that vulnerability feels really funny and good. And like I was in a class with everybody from, there was actually an equity actor from like a Broadway tour to, there was a blind bank teller in the class as well. And we had everything in between, right? Like on the spectrum. It was so cool to me that people were showing up being like, I want to take a risk and I want to learn this. And I was like, I love the attitude of the people in here. This is so cool. And so, so I started classes and I think I was hooked. Like, I think I was hooked maybe after 2 or 3 classes in, that I was like, oh, I want to do this the rest of my life. I want to find a way for this to be part of my life for the rest of my life. Because there was something about it that was so collaborative and funny at the same time. And I think that is actually why I prefer improv for myself, improv over stand-up, because I think improv is like the team sport of comedy. It depends on the other person, right? And giving generous offers to the other person, and then listening and responding and connecting. And then one of the most famous phrases of improv, which is yes and, is like supporting your partner, supporting your team, like being a team player. All these things that I think are really important in life are a part of improv too. And so I can dig it.
Yeah, so let's talk about I think when people think of improv, they think of like whose line is it anyway, like people being hilarious and just like letting loose in front on a stage, and that is what it is on like a stage, but I feel like it's helpful in real life too. Can you explain to people that may not know that why you think anyone should take an improv class?
Yes. Sorry, I was just telling someone that I could hear a little bit of music. I don't know if you're catching that too, but
I couldn't hear anything.
okay, sounds good. So you were saying that that you're asking about the reason for taking an improv class?
Yeah, like why should anyone take an improv class, even if they don't want to be an actor or an improv or a professional improviser?
Yeah.
Because you said
So
there was a bank teller and some other people that weren't even into acting in the class.
absolutely, absolutely, and that was one of the most inspiring things was being like, whoa, people want to show up and they want to learn this because they would say like, oh, I'd like to be better at talking in front of people, or I give presentations for work, but instead of just saying the script, I'd really like to go off script and feel really comfortable as myself in front of a group, right? And so
Mhm.
kind of learning these improv skills of like, I want to connect more with people. I want to be in a conversation and be able to really listen and respond and connect and all these things, right? So that's why I'm like, yo, improv is for everybody. I think everybody should do it, no matter what. It's
Mhm.
great for performers, but it's great for human beings. To just learn about. I mean, I think one of the coolest things, like if you were to say, all right, how do I use improv in like the business in a conference room? How would I end up using improv, right? That if you're in
Mhm.
like a group meeting, even within a business or whatever, that it's like someone sharing an idea, and if the first thing you can do is yes and their idea, then you can talk about that for real instead of shutting someone down, going right on the defense, and then having this whole conversation that like now everyone starts to protect themselves, the walls go up, and we can't have that real conversation about where something could go brainstorming wise, right?
Mhm.
And so I think to even think about in a business, in a family context, let's say that you're using some improv principles in a family context of how to come up with creative solutions of building your family and being a stronger, more connected family. When you yes and each other, then you're getting creative about like, ooh, how can we make this work? And as failures come up, right? Like you celebrate the failures, because there's games like Zip Zap Zop. Every time someone gets out of the game, you clap about it, and it's like, that feels weird. I just got eliminated. Why am I clapping? And you start to learn that it's like, if you start celebrating the failures, then you let them be a part of your life. You let them be a part of like growing and learning. And you say, like, all right, cool. We figured out something that didn't work as well. Now we get to be creative together and figure out something that works. Or you
Mhm.
use it to laugh about it too, right?
Looks like someone needs the definition of improv. We may have lost some people that don't even know what it is.
Oh, okay. I see the question now.
I
Yes.
feel like you can answer this better than me.
Okay, yeah. I apologize because I didn't give a formal definition, but
I didn't think we needed to either, so
no,
it's fine.
it's
Yeah.
exciting because I love teaching about it, so I'm jazzed. But yeah, I would say that to improv is to make something up on the spot as you go.
Mhm.
And so what that would mean within like a class, right? I teach an improv 101 or beginners improv. And what it means if you come to class and you say, all right, I don't know what improv is at all. What is improv? Then I would say, well, in the class here, we're going to be learning about listening to each other. And like, even when you don't have an answer, you're stepping into a scene, you have no idea what to say. Um, you'll realize how to connect with another person and also yourself to figure out, whoa, everything I need for this is actually already inside of me. And everything I need for this scene is connected with this other human being that's right in front of me too. So I can improv, I can come up with stuff on the spot because the stuff that's needed, I already have it. I hope that
That's a
defines
great.
it a little bit more. It's
I
a
think
little
it did,
tough.
definitely.
Yeah. It's a little tough.
So, so I know you love improv, but let's move on to. So I've actually made a couple of films with Deanna. Deanna is so much fun to work with. I love having her on set. She's a great producer and actress. So,
Thanks.
Deanna, why don't you talk about? So I'm going to show this film called Rental Dream that Deanna was in. And Deanna, why don't you kind of set the stage, like tell everybody like how this came to be while I kind of set this up.
Okay, absolutely. So Trevor was hanging out at the Thunderdome, and I remember so distinctly that he was like walking around with his camera, and he's like, "I don't know, I just feel like filming something." And these are the magic words to my ears because as an actor, as an improviser, as soon as someone's like, "I don't know, I just feel like filming something right now," I'm like, "Oh, yes. This is everything. This is everything I could want to do is like someone has a camera and wants to film and then we can make it up as we go." And so like we're pacing around the like living room of the Thunderdome trying to decide what the film's going to be about. We're like throwing ideas around and honestly kind of yes anding each other, being like, we could do this. Ooh, and we could do this. Ooh, is this stronger? Does this work? And then we ended up going to a nearby video rental store to make this.
It was great, and we were probably I think we did this in 2 hours, if I
Yes.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
So this is one of my favorite films I've made, and also like the quickest film I've ever made in
Yeah.
2 hours, which is just ridiculous. That should not exist, but here it is. Hopefully the audio works. So let's. This is Rental Dream.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Whoa! Yes, so that was Rental Dream. By the way, were you able to hear that?
Yes, I could.
Yes, cool. Awesome. I could
I wonder
too.
if everybody on our
Nobody said anything different, so I'm going to assume that it worked. It went swimmingly.
woo.
Um, so I think that is a good product of improv. Like improv isn't just, getting on a stage. I think it's also with, camera work and,
Mm.
production. And with this, we literally got to this rental store and we were like, "Hey, can we film this?" And dude was like, "Yes, but you only have 20 minutes."
Yeah.
So we did this in 2 hours, but we only had 20 minutes inside the store. So everything that you see inside the store was only filmed in 20 minutes. Then, bless this dude's heart, but the store clerk, for the very last shot, we needed it on, and so I was like, all right, Corey, walk away. And then our friend Frank, who played Deanna's boyfriend in the film, he was like, dude, Trevor, whenever he walks away, you should have the sign go off. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that would be dope. Yeah, Frank's awesome. So Frank, he suggested that, and I was like, this is brilliant. So the dude, Frank was like, all right, I'll signal you whenever you turn it off. So dude turns it off, and Corey just walks away, and it's like one of my favorite shots I've ever gotten, and it was such a like spur of the moment thing that happened, and that's improv. Even the sign going off was just
Yes.
it was beautiful.
Yes. And kind of taking it back to two things, I believe you interviewed Isaac last night. And
Uh-huh.
he's actually the one that taught me about like the 10%, which
Mhm.
another word that I use for that is magic. Another word that could be interchanged for that is like the improv of being creative and making film, and like in a scene in improv, you kind of throw your ball into the air with your scene partner, and you're both like, we don't know what's going to happen, but that's it. Like, that's what makes this awesome. And so when you were like, can we film something? And I had no answers of anything. I was like, oh, we're going to get to create this together. And then all this cool stuff happened. So, um, yeah, that was a really fun project.
It was, and shout out to Corey. Corey was
Yeah.
was he doesn't like, I don't think he considers himself an actor,
Yeah.
but we threw him into it and he did great. He was so cooperative.
Yeah. Corey's an incredible filmmaker and very talented in a bunch of different
Very
aspects.
talented guy.
But yeah, he just has this really cool look, and we thought it was great for the video. So thanks to Corey.
Also, he had an ET. So if you watch that again, that is ET on his head.
Yeah.
And he had a members only jacket, which is the most cool, which is just the coolest 80s jacket you can own.
Yeah, officially coolest style shout out goes to Corey. Bold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Second, of course, is Deanna. I'm just kidding.
I don't know about that. I'm pretty
You did great.
good.
But talking about the 80s, so it's not done yet. We're doing color tonight, but we did a music video, me and Deanna, a few months ago that I feel bad I never got to finish. I won't get into it, but some complications with the artist that I did the music video for originally happened. So I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to waste this footage. Like, I think it's stupid to just throw away footage just because one thing didn't work out. And here we go, improv. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it to this song because I love this song. And the footage like worked perfectly. It was beautiful and I loved it. So I was going to premiere it tonight on the stream, but I think we might have to wait until Monday. So
Monday.
um, Deanna, what did you think about being on set for that film?
Oh my goodness, that was wild. That was a lot of fun. I remember when you were talking to me about it, and we were kind of sort of brainstorming, and wanted to do that 80s theme, and we brainstormed outfit ideas. And I loved, like, as you described the shots to me, they were so like visual. I don't want to give anything away. So basically, but seeing the shots through your eyes made me that much more excited about it, because I was like, ooh, this is going to look really cool.
Mhm.
And so, yeah. And I just feel like as a person, I love to work with you, where it's like, I consider it an honor every time, because you're a very hard worker and very talented. And you have that improv mindset where it's like, when you start adapting improv as a lifestyle of being like open and vulnerable and willing to take risks and willing to yes and people that you're in relationship with and working with, it's like, yeah, it makes things more fun. And as the failures come at you, you can learn from them and then be like, okay, here's another opportunity to be creative. What's another right answer? And then what's another right answer?
Mhm. And yeah, I love working with you too. It's just fantastic. So I wanted to try something really quick, if you're down for that.
Yeah.
So kind of want to do a reaction kind of thing. So I was gonna look up a Whose Line Is It Anyway compilation and just gonna watch a little bit of it. And I kind of want you to analyze it and tell me like why this works. Like I feel like anybody can be like, yeah, that's hilarious, and
Ooh,
it almost looks planned. And I don't know if it was planned or not, but it's a show about improv. So um, Deanna, can you tell people what Whose Line Is It Anyway is before we start for
yes,
the people who may not know?
absolutely. This is a short form improv show, probably the most famous short form improv show that's ever been on TV. There's a lot of other forms of comedy, sketch comedy, long form comedy. We aren't going to get into all that. But this right here is going to be short form for TV, game show style. And I didn't know this was going to happen, so I'm very nervous and excited to analyze the scene. So lay it on me.
Yeah, I love this show. I absolutely, I didn't watch it a whole lot as a kid, but whenever I was in high school, I took improv classes, and my director, Lindsay Smith, was like, go watch Whose Line. And I watched it, and I watched like a million hours of it, it felt like. And I was just like, why do I love this so much? It's so good.
Oh.
And so Deanna, so the game that I kind of want to play with you right now is, so we're gonna watch. There's a little compilation, and I know it says an hour long, but we're not gonna watch that whole thing. We're just gonna watch maybe a few minutes, and maybe after each scene from a hat, maybe we'll stop it, and I'm gonna ask Deanna, like, why does this work? Like, how are they doing that? Like, how are they working so well together? Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Awesome. All right, so let me share my screen because I'm still learning how to use technology.
And in the meantime, I'll try to look at some of these questions and comments here.
Yeah, sure.
I can address. Oh, someone's going to lay the yes and hit my boss with a yes and in next staff meeting. Or make stuff.
Yes, and in a Zoom meeting probably now.
Yeah. Throw it in that
Cool.
meeting and see how it goes.
And after this, there was a question earlier. What was your favorite narrative and non-narrative project that you've acted in? Let's answer that after this.
Sure. Sounds great. I'll have to think on that a little bit.
Cool. All right. You ready, Deanna?
Ready.
Awesome. Let's go.
Unusual things for a neighbor to ask to borrow.
Suzanne, I need to borrow your husband.
Hi, I need some monkey testicles and a cola.
Hey, I was just wondering if you could keep your blinds open like an hour later.
All right, Deanna. So these guys were all by themselves on a stage. They're not necessarily interacting with each other, but why do you think like this like form works? Or, you know, Colin Mockery, like he's a legend with improv. He's such an incredible actor and just he's so funny. So why do you think these types of jokes work for this scenario?
So this one is a little bit dependent on the prompt. That is an excellent prompt to say unusual things to ask your neighbor. So already you're going to live within the world of subverting here, which is, okay, what are the things you normally would ask your neighbor for? A cup of sugar or perhaps a stick of butter. And so but you're going with the unusual things, right? So the smart player, it might be unusual to ask for monkey testicles, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Right there. But to throw in the Coke, that would be something you would usually ask for. So that's a smart move as a player because if you were just to say the monkey testicles alone, it might be a little too far. But to throw in something that would be like, yeah, you might ask your neighbor for a Coke. That's very fun. To ask about the blinds staying open later, I think it's a vulnerable thing, right? To come in as a character that would be known as sort of this creeper, peeping Tom character, right? It's like, ooh, I'm gonna have to take a risk here to be this kind of character. And when you do, you know, the bigger the risk in some cases, especially this one, the bigger the win, because that is absolutely such a fun thing to think of. Maybe because it's not real life, it's more fun to think of a neighbor asking that.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on.
If you used stripper moves to perform mundane tasks.
Nurse, scalpel.
Yes.
Don't know if that would work in 2020.
Contact.
What did he say?
Cool. Now that what was the prompt?
No, what did he say? Something about the contact?
Oh yeah, he was like, "Where is my contact?" That's funny. So definitely didn't expect that one. So I feel like that's kind of obvious why it's funny, but why do you think it works? Like, so this time, like Wayne Brady, I forgot the lady's name, but he was working with an actress on that one. Why do you think that? How do you think that was able to work, and what do you think was like going through their mind, like in that moment?
Yeah, so this is going to have to do with full commitment, and then
Yeah.
also like giving gifts to your partner, right? So the more committed, especially like improv can be all the way in your body, right? And you have to completely forget about what you're looking like, right? It can be very vulnerable to do stripper moves for anyone, but especially on the stage, it's like, but when you commit more, you make that bigger commitment, you give such a gift to your partner because now they can be free to do the same. And I saw that happening in that first scene, that like commitment was huge, giving the gift to your partner of committing fully, and then yes anding. So as soon as it's like scalpel, the other person's like, yes, okay, I got it. We're in a doctor's office. And you yes and then you go straight into that.
Mm-hmm. So what would your advice be to because I feel like a lot of people have these big ideas and moments and they're too afraid to commit. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be like, if you're at a party and you want to, do stripper moves or something like that. I feel like that's also a good life lesson too. Like if you have these big ideas in your head and you do what?
It's a good life lesson to do stripper moves at a party.
Absolutely. If you want to do stripper moves at a party, like that's some quality thing to do. So like if somebody has this big idea in their head or in their heart and they're wanting to do it, but if there's a little to no commitment, then it's just not going to work. What would you say to those people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And are you talking about specifically within improv or just in life and like in life?
Improv and life in general. Let's start with improv.
Sure. Yeah. So in improv, you've seen this in my class too. Trevor's actually been to my class before.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thanks.
It's awesome.
There's times where people say like, okay, I wasn't sure, that scene never really got on the railroad tracks and really got moving. And we'll check in and say, okay, did we ask questions or did we make statements? Did we play to the top of our intelligence? Did we take risks? Did we like make an emotional choice about what the other person's offering? Because within all those things, you're like making a decision and going for it. You're being vulnerable, taking the risk, and really committing all the way. And so every time you see that in a scene, almost every single time, you also see the scene work. You also, just see the scene have this ability to get on the railroad tracks and move. And so I would say that it's the same for life, right? That like every time it's like, oh gosh, I feel stuck. And I feel like I don't know exactly what I want. And I don't know what I want to do next. Or I feel scared to do this thing. As soon as you make a choice and you're like, okay, even without all the information, I'm going to commit to this. And now I'm going to go. And I'm just going to go. And I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to take risks and move. Then you'll notice that like you get on the train tracks and you start moving. And I think that, to quote Paulo Coelho from The Alchemist, then the universe conspires to support you, right? The universe conspires, and I don't know if that's a direct quote, so I don't want to get in trouble. It conspires.
Deanna's a professional quotist,
That's yeah, definitely not
That's a thing, right?
my title. But it conspires for everything that you want, right? So as you like make the choice about what you want and you start moving forward, you realize like all these other things start to get on the train track with you, and it's amazing.
That is awesome. And do you think improv has helped you with this? Have you ever had a big idea, such as, wanting to work for Fox Sports or move to Atlanta? Do you think improv helped you like, you know what, this isn't going to work unless I fully commit to this?
Yes. And I can tell, I don't know how much time we have left. I can tell a vulnerable story that's about that with Fox Sports, if you'd like.
Okay, sure.
I'll try to tell the short version. But basically, when I started out with Fox Sports, I had never hosted a sports TV show ever in my life. And I knew that already this was a very vulnerable, big risk, like commitment that I felt myself kind of like trying to figure out. And I was really scared to tell the production team how much I didn't know about it, how uncomfortable I was sometimes trying to like do it perfect and feel like I could be good enough for their standard. And we probably got like halfway into the season when the director pretty much just said to me like, hey, this TV show has gotten worse with you in it. It's actually worse because you're here. And that was probably one of the hardest things that's happened to me in my career, is just someone bold-faced saying like, you suck. And I cried a lot. I remember, like, because we were, at race location on one of the beaches in Florida, like, I just went to my hotel room that night and I cried for a long time, thinking like, I'm not good enough. And I hate that director was like so disappointed in me. And I don't know if I can pick myself back up again. And I had a really important conversation with my brother, which was like, he asked me a direct question of, did you do everything in your power that you could to prepare? Was there no stone left unturned, essentially, in the preparation for you in your role? And then I said no to him, and I cried a lot harder, because I realized that what was the most disappointing to me is that I was selling myself short, and I wasn't even putting all the work that I could put in, which is the part that I could control. I wasn't committing all the way, essentially. There was like half commitment, like I was scared to really commit and then have that be a failure. So I wanted to half commit so that I could like never really get disappointed. Or if it was a failure anyway, oh, well, I guess it's because I never really gave myself to it. And after that, I said, things are going to change and they're going to be different. Starting today, I'm going to do everything I can to prepare the maximum amount every time I show up on set that I'm with Fox Sports. And then I did. And at the end of that season, they said, we think you're the best host we've ever had.
Really?
For that specific show. Not for all of Fox Sports, for history.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, wow, what an honor. Where's all the awards?
Yeah, I got so many awards. I just, they are at my mom's.
Yeah. Wow. Who would have thought this would come from watching stripper moves on Whose Line Is It Anyway?
That's right. Yeah. So
yeah, let's answer this last question, and then we'll, have some closing statements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So somebody asked, what was your favorite narrative and non-narrative film? I'm so sorry we didn't answer this way earlier when you asked.
Yeah, I know. I hope they're still on.
Yeah, me too.
If you are, give a wave. Man, this is so tough because I've loved so many different projects. I believe that within narrative, oh yay, still here. Okay.
Hey.
I think within narrative, I'm going to include commercial work, I think. In narrative? I have to actually think about this a little bit, because I want to list a commercial as one of my favorite projects that I ever did. But but even within the 30 seconds that it was, and that was like the running time, it was still narrative. So my favorite commercial that I ever did was for it was for an app, like a grocery store app called Flip, FLIP, and it's called Sinking Ship, where I play a character that is at the grocery store and not sure if that she can pay for all of her groceries, and she like starts sinking, and then it cuts to she's like sinking in the ocean, right? And we had to actually get all those shots like in a boat in the ocean. They had a drone.
Whoa.
Like we did all that for real, practical. And
that's cool.
And so for anyone that's not like big time into film, that just means like we shot it in the actual water instead of a green screen or having any of that be fake. And so that was totally wild, and like the adventure of a lifetime for like a TV commercial, that it was like so adventurous and involved all this risk, and like I could fall in the water at any moment. And we had like chase boat cameras everywhere, like every angle, and all this really cool stuff. So yeah, that was just really, really a lot of fun. And I loved working with that team, and everybody was really cool. For a non-narrative project, I think, let's see. Well, everything pretty much after Fox Sports, I would call it narrative. So everything from like music videos to commercials to I just did a project recently for a POS system. I don't know if I'm allowed to name it yet because I don't think it's out, but I would call that a non-narrative. And I got to work with an awesome filmmaker, John Selden. And so that's
John. He's going to be on the show sometime.
Yay!
Yeah, John's the man. He's great.
absolutely. And so that's part of what made that a favorite project to work on, because it was very challenging and also, just tons of fun. I actually get to work. I want to list one more because I'm very heavily into sketch comedy as well. So I'm getting to work with Shift Drinks now, and you can go check out all of their really cool stuff on all of their social media handles. And I got to do a sketch called Role Play. You can check out on their page. And that's also one of my favorite projects that I ever did, because that's the first thing I filmed with them. And now I'm getting to work with them a lot, and I love Shift Drinks. I love working with them. I think they're so smart and so funny.
Awesome. Well, Deanna, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close?
Oh, I mean, I think that I always want to be more inspiring maybe than I feel like I have been in the last hour and 20. I hope that, I hope that it just, if there's something that you are really feeling kind of nervous to take the risk with, that we would challenge each other to both be brave and take the risks, right? So for you and me, Trevor, but for anyone here listening and anyone on the chat, I think that, I did get a little bit of a clarification here, I think, on this last one, and I can address that.
Do you like doing comedy or drama narrative better?
Ooh, such a good question. Comedy is currently my absolute favorite, but I like to challenge myself in drama because that's really tough for me.
You're great at both, by the way.
Thank you. That's
awesome. Well, Deanna, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast. Definitely want to have you on again soon. So hopefully this quarantine will pass and you can leave your house and have some fun outside, because I know you've been stuck at the danger zone.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, I live with all like creative makers, so it's been, this has been great to talk to you because I've missed you, and it's been fun to catch up and chat, and I can't wait to hang out in person.
Yeah. Oh, Alex Pham said, don't forget to talk about your class. Deanna, give a shout out to your class.
Yeah. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. This is what I'm the most excited to talk about. I'm currently in a virtual improv class, and it is on Thursdays at 7:00. So if you would like to join us, you can come learn Improv 101, beginners improv. Sometimes I teach some advanced exercises too. So watch out for that. But yeah, just if it's something you are curious about, feel free to join us. Feel free to join us, and you can go to my Instagram handle, which is listed on this stream right here, right under my face. And I have improv information on there.
Awesome. Well, Deanna, I know I feel like I've closed it like 6 times already, but thank you so much. Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye. We don't know what's going to happen, but that's it. Like, that's what makes this awesome.